Hello and welcome to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello.
What's up?
Not a whole lot. We are talking about the final two episodes, episodes 9 and 10 of the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. Finished definitely with a bang. You might be surprised to hear, but the Chicago Bulls did in fact beat the Indiana Pacers. Which was much of the subject of episode 9, sort of the rivalry with the Pacers and Reggie Miller in particular. We also get into the 1997 finals against the Utah Jazz, the first of two finals the Bulls played against the Jazz. And we get a little bit into the life story of Steve Kerr, of course, was a role player for the Bulls in that second three-peat and hits a big shot in Game 6. So good stuff there. Episode 10, of course, we really focusing, pretty much on 1998 and the final days of the Bulls and their series win against the Utah Jazz for the second time.
Yeah, I thought two tremendous episodes. I thought episode 9 may be one of my favorite ones of the entire series. I think the diversion towards the Kerr story played out perfectly because there was a lot of people that do not know that story. I know I got messages from buddies and stuff that were like, "Oh my crap, I had no idea that was in his life," and I think it's cool because it set up perfectly for, okay, here's all that this guy went through. Here's the trials and tribulations of his life, and oh yeah, here he is hitting like a clutch shot. Here he is winning the NBA Finals basically with a fantastic shot. So I thought really good job of telling that story. And as I said, in our prior episodes when we were kind of reacting to it, is I love that we're getting like it started kind of smushing a little bit where it was like 97, 98. Like there was nowhere else to go. We had kind of approached 1998 finally, and we were getting to the final bits of the season, and there was nowhere else to go in the past. We were here, we were there, and I kind of like that thing. But no, I thought the Kerr stuff was great, and I thought episode 9 was just like a really good, really tight episode that I thought told a lot of good stories with the feud with Reggie, or the rivalry with Reggie, if you want to say. A little bit of the 98 series, a little bit of the 97 Utah series, the Kerr story. So I thought just a tremendous episode. And 10 was very good as well. I thought these two episodes, any disappointment that this thing wasn't going to end with two fantastic episodes, that we didn't have to worry about that. These were really good.
Yeah, it definitely closed down. It was, again, every episode I think was at least good or interesting, and some of the stronger episodes, of the series have been a lot of great ones, some very good ones. I mean, the worst one was at least was interesting and still had some good stuff in there, especially if you don't know Jordan's career really well. I mean, you have to. I think it's hard for us to understand sometimes. They're easy to forget that there are a lot of people who are going into this who do not have extensive knowledge of Michael Jordan's career in NBA in the way that you and I do. And even, you and I certainly learned plenty from this series, but there is, some basic storytelling to understand, this context stuff that you and I have been over before. I think is necessary to tell the story from probably a large percentage of the fans, watching this documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm always kind of amazed when I do have buddies that are like, "Oh my god, I didn't know that." I'm like, "How'd you not?" But I'm like, "Oh yeah, right. I'm an idiot. Like I'm the weirdo, not you. Like you're perfectly normal that you don't know all this intricate stuff about the 1998 Indiana Pacers or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm always like, "How did you not know that?" No. And they're like, "Well, why would I know that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Like,
Right. All right.
that's just me."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the weirdo. Yeah.
Like people were, the thing, especially, I mean, the episode 10, we're going to get to it. I mean, that was our lives crashing forward with Rodman, skipping out to go, be on WCW Nitro and fuck around with Hogan and the NWO or whatever.
Sure.
And there's people that are like, "Whoa, Rodman did that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course he did." But like the cross section of hardcore NBA history fans and wrestling fans, pretty small, but you and I tend to be, like it's not that extensive. So it was just kind of funny that like other people were like, "Whoa, what did he do? That's insane. I can't believe he did that." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course he did." Like, that's I was, and that was me even in 1998. I was like, "Hell yeah, Rodman, screw the playoffs. Go, hit DDP with a chair. Screw that guy."
Right. Practice is overrated.
Right. I agree.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, episode 9, we start with Reggie. He says that, he respected Jordan, obviously, but didn't fear him like he felt the rest of the league did. Tells a story early on in his career where, he has a good first half against Jordan. And then he says something to kind of show Jordan up, and then Jordan, kills him in the second half. And then the lesson there is don't ever talk trash to Black Jesus. So Reggie says he always referred to him as either Black Jesus or what was the other nickname that
He called him
the Black
Jordan. He
Cat.
said Jordan. Yeah, Black Cat. I either call him Jordan, Black Jesus, or Black Cat. I think. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, never called him Michael though after that. So, and yeah, I mean, we get into the '98 Pacers a little bit. You know that they were deep team. Larry Bird is their coach. You know they're experienced. They seem like they're ready. Jordan calls them the toughest rival that they kind of had during that time, outside, of course, of the Pistons before they broke through and won the championship. And one thing that I hadn't really thought about, or I sort of been thinking about, but never was really able to verbalize until now. But I kind of felt like a lot of this documentary, the obstacles that Jordan seems to face the most are internal. Like, it doesn't really come from his opponents. It comes from Jordan, losing his love for the game, or Jordan, like, constantly trying to find ways to motivate himself, finding these petty things. And, of course, there's the death of his father, which is, external, but it just, how emotional and how difficult that is. And, that a challenge, but I feel like in some respects, the actual games, the actual rivalries, the actual players don't feel like extremely tough obstacles for Jordan. And maybe that's just implied, and maybe Jordan doesn't have to say that, or documentary doesn't have to say that. Maybe Jordan, in a way, the competitor in him doesn't allow him to let himself feel that way about his opponents. Right. But I felt like in this case, particularly the Pacers here, there is that esteem. Jordan gives it a little bit, the documentary gives it, and Utah to a degree as well. So I don't know if you noticed that as well, but that was something I was kind of thinking about going into today before these two episodes.
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely onto something, and that probably is a lot of what Jordan's mindset is that nobody is better than me, and no team is better than the team that I lead or whatever. So it's all this other stuff that's causing me to lose. It's not because that team is better than me, or that player is better than me, or they're better coached or anything like that. It's just that we brought up a few episodes ago when they talk about the '95 team losing to the Orlando Magic, and it's like, yeah, Jordan was just tired, and that's why he lost. And it's like, well, I mean, maybe it's because Orlando had like 4 like bona fide star players all at the same time, all in the prime of their careers, all playing like tremendous basketball all at the same time. Like, it may have been that, but no, it's like, no, it was Jordan was tired. That's why that happened. And yeah, I think that's partially because it tells a better story in that sense, that like, here's this unbeatable force, and here are the only things that can really get in their way. And it's not like this player or that team or whatnot. I think they could have done a good job of telling that story if they really wanted to, because there were obstacles like that. There were, teams that did get in the way. But once 1990 passes and he beats the Pistons, it's like pretty much we never go back to this team was really good and this team really scared us. Other than the Pacers, I think is the last one you get it, and that one's a little bit easy because it's like the final season. It's the it's easy to tell that story. But yeah, in between that, you're absolutely right. It's like there is not a team out there. There's not a player out there. There's no hint of doubt that if it's not for our own mental demons, we're going to beat this team. And that's probably a little bit of how Jordan actually thinks in real life as well. So.
Yeah, I can see that. And, obviously you can't include everything. You have to make choices. But I mean, those finals, like most of those series went 6 games. I mean, most of the series were tough on the Bulls, at least in certain aspects of it. And it feels like, overcoming an obstacle is a better story than overcoming, a guy who was like, not mentally tough or a bum or, just not in my league kind of thing, which I kind of feel like sometimes, like Drexler, for instance, or not to rehash the old stuff necessarily, but I feel like that's the way it was treated to a certain respect. And, the Pistons, I think, are more presented as like, well, they had to cheat to win, basically. It was, is the implication for, why they had their success, or, or Pippen wasn't ready yet, or whatever. So it's, I'm not really throwing that as a criticism, but I just thought it was just something that kind of popped in my head today before these episodes. But again,
absolutely. Yeah, no, you're definitely onto something there. And I would hope that people watching it do understand that there were a lot of really, really good teams that, were in the 90s. It wasn't just, Michael Jordan and everybody else. They won a lot of the titles, but there were some really good teams and some really great players in that. So yeah, but I think most people probably listening to us know that, but if they're I think there are probably a lot of people watching this that just go like, oh yeah, they were all bums, and and Jordan
Right.
was, the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was the best, but there
Yeah.
were a lot of other really, really good players and really good teams, and a lot of teams that gave those guys trouble, but the Bulls were such a well-oiled machine and so well coached, and obviously led by Michael Jordan, which obviously helps, and spearheaded by Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and all those sort of guys. And yeah, it took a lot of work to win a lot of those series too. It wasn't just a fucking walk in the park every single time. Like you said, a lot of those series went to 6 games.
Yeah, right.
These unbeatable forces. It's not like they just swept through the league and was like, all right, what do we do next year? Like, no, they were taking to the limits a lot.
Yeah, and maybe with Jordan, with his grace and with his brilliance, that just makes it look easy, even though it wasn't easy.
Sure.
But that's the way. It's easy to tell that way. But anyway, I mean, getting into the Pacers story, the Pacers are all bald. They all shaved their heads. Did they shave their heads at the beginning of the series, or was that like Game 3?
I thought it. I don't know. It creeps me out to so much to such an incredible degree that I usually don't look it up. I was hoping that they were going to address it here, but I guess you can't put everything in there. There's really no reason to address it. I just kind of was like, I'm surprised. I mean, okay, the ball thing was like Mark Jackson, fine. Reggie Miller, fine. Once we got to like Rick Smits, that's creepy. Chris Mullin, creepy. The creepiest is like Fred Hoiberg there because he's like 21 years old, and there's just like a little. I know American History X was around the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
They get like a little. Just get a little uncomfortable there with the bald. Yeah, I don't know who spearheaded it or what the history behind it was, but maybe a topic for another show that we can do. Basketball mysteries of the 1990s. Why were the Pacers bald?
There you go. Yes. Thank goodness Larry didn't join in, though. That would have been.
That would have been. Oh man, how cool would that have been? Like, all right, guys, we're doing it. Let's do it. Like he just shaves it in the middle.
Yeah. So the Bulls win the first 2 games in Chicago, both by 6. Jordan gets the MVP trophy. Those games. Tight competitive games, but not too much trouble for the Bulls. But the Pacers come back, win game 3 and 4. Reggie hits some tough shots in game 3. The Pacers win by only 2. But Jordan, kind of nonplussed reaction afterwards. Like, they beat us, but they had to play really, really well, and they only beat us by 2, and it was in their home floor. Same kind of thing. Game 4. The Bulls are up by 1. Indiana commits a turnover with 6 seconds left, but Pippen is in foul and misses both free throws. So it's 2.9 seconds left. Reggie coming off the screen, gives Jordan a shove and hits 3 for the game winner. Jordan then after that, which I'd forgotten about, actually does get a chance at a game winner, and it's a double clutch. The shot bounces out. So Indiana's tied, but MJ still, saying, you still got to come to Chicago. So MJ at least outwardly showing that confidence, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I always kind of forget too that there is that shot afterwards, because you see the Reggie Miller shot pretty famously all the time, and yeah, you really you just do kind of forget that Jordan did have a final shot there, and that it was as close as it was too. Like it's unbelievable how close that would have been, and that would have really almost been. I don't want to say even more of an all-time moment, but like, man, like that one especially would have just been a perfect, like, because it's just pure spite. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, this asshole thinks he's going to end this game. No, he's not. Like, it would have just been perfect for Jordan to go out there and just bury Reggie Miller once again with that. But it's good that Reggie, I guess, got one, thing that he can always hang his hat on. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. Obviously, Jordan has an incredible array of clutch shots and big shots moment, but walk off the floor shots. I don't think he has any major ones in the finals, and obviously the shot in Cleveland and the second one in Cleveland are the 2 notable ones. But there are this would have been Eastern Conference Finals, obviously, but this would have probably been the biggest, deepest one of his career had he hit that one.
Oh, for sure, absolutely,
and most spectacular one. So. We cut. This was, I don't know, a little strange, but I guess not super strange. But they cut to 97 to Utah rather than just kind of continuing the series from there. I feel like it kind of, on one hand, it would have kind of made sense to just kind of do all the Utah stuff together, even though the Indiana stuff is kind of in the middle of it. That's kind of the a little bit of the oddness of the structure of this documentary. When it makes more sense when the time periods are further apart, but when they're only like 1 year apart, it's kind of hard to figure that out. But anyway, finishing the Indiana thread, they kind of skip over games 5 and 6, which end up being split. They talk about game 7. This is the first game 7 since 92 for Jordan. Jordan had publicly guaranteed the Game 7 win. We talk about, Jordan having a group of security guards, which we've referenced before. He talks about them. These are like, kind of a group of older guys that, were around me a lot, kind of gave me some guidance, kind of, as he was later on in his career, felt like he wanted, that kind of thing. Obviously they're helping, literally with his security and helping him as he's going through, the arena or, public events or whatever. And then we get into Gus Lett, who was kind of the leader there. Someone who Jordan saw as a mentor, especially after his father died. Jordan's mother refers to him as a great protector. Jordan would call him sometimes at like 2 a.m. kind of thing. He passed away from cancer in 2000. He's sick with cancer at this point in 1998. But we get some really touching footage of him and Jordan together, and that was a story that I didn't know, so that was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, Gus is awesome. Yeah, that was a really cool, and that's they didn't go into it in a ton of detail on the documentary, but I do know from me researching it in the past or whatnot that Jordan also paid for like all of Gus's medical expenses, like made sure that he got the best care, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's something that they didn't, and maybe it's probably better that they didn't spend a bunch of time really going over it. It's one of those things that even at the time I think Jordan kind of was hush hush about it, just like I don't really need this glory, I just want my buddy to stay alive and get the best care they can. So sure. We're not we're ones to sometimes poke holes in the veneer of Michael Jordan or whatnot, but that's one
sure.
that's like an all-time great moment.
Sure.
and an all-time great friendship that he had too with Gus. So yeah, it was really cool that they included that a little bit. It wasn't long. It was only 5 minutes or whatnot, but I think it did a really great job of kind of humanizing Jordan and telling a great story along the way as well.
Right, and then Gus accompanies the team and Jordan in this game. He'd been absent for a while. We get clips of Ahmad Rashad and Jordan, talking. Ahmad keeps repeating, "Some can, some can't, some can, some can't," and then Jordan finally says, "Don't talk to Scott Burrell about that." Worrying about Burrell not coming through. In the clutch kind of thing. Obviously Burrell been the whipping boy throughout the entire series.
Okay, so I like Ahmad Rashad. He's cool.
Yeah.
NBA stuff. Ahmad was my guy. But he wasn't even hiding it, man. Come on, like you're kind of like a broadcast journalist, sort of, in a way. And this dude's just straight up feet on the table, talking to MJ, like hell yeah, man, hell yeah, MJ. It's just like, oh man, come on, Ahmad. Like like imagine like that would not fly today. In no universe, people talk all the time now about these today's players. This guy, like, no, there would never ever be like Brian Windhorst like follows LeBron James around, but he's not like feet on the table, like LB, like what's up, man? How you doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like Brian Windhorst like just has to stay at a hotel near LeBron James and occasionally talk to him after games. And that's like, oh man, Brian Windhorst and LeBron James, they're like neck and neck. Like Ahmad's just chilling back there. There's the one scene earlier in the series where Ahmad's driving with the guy.
Right.
And I'm like, come on.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's obviously a huge exception. And Ahmad being a former athlete and someone Jordan could relate to.
To be honest, I don't care. I just find it like hilarious that there's like no journalistic integrity whatsoever out of Ahmad Rashad.
Right.
And again, I don't really care. It's not that big of a deal. It's just kind of funny that like, it just not even know. Like, I don't know at the time, did we know that? Like, I was a little younger. I don't know if I knew that. Did we know that Ahmad was just like in the circle, just kind of there? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it had been reported out at some point. I mean, I'm sure like people, in the know in the NBA knew, but and I think I heard a couple, when I read one of the Jordan biographies recently, I think the Roland Lazenby one, they talk about that some, and I'm sure it had been reviewed before that, but I didn't know that. I was, only about 18, 19 at this point. So I wasn't a huge NBA fan at the time. So it wasn't something that I knew, certainly. So for what it's worth. So, the Pacers take a big lead early in this game. There's definitely looks early on like, the Pacers could win this one. Of course, a big lead means more in 1998 when scores are much lower than they were than it did now. But they were up 13, I think, in the second quarter. But the Bulls rally, end up taking a small lead. But the Pacers do get back into it. It's kind of a dogfight near the end. There's a key moment where the Pacers are up by 3, about 6 minutes left. There's a tip ball where it's Smits and Jordan, and of course Rick Smits is 7'4", but he's also has a very bad vertical, and the ball ends up getting tipped to Pippen. Kerr gets an open 3-pointer, tie the game, and it's the Pacers kind of fall apart a little bit, and the Bulls take it from there. They win 88-83. Michael gives Gus the game ball afterward, and we get some great. We get some great. First of all, we get Michael Jordan with the giant mustard suit that he wears afterward, just like this giant yellow thing that he's walking around. And then we get some great interaction with Larry Bird afterward, where Bird kind of congratulates each other, and then they playfully talk trash to each other. Some very colorful language used by Jordan there. So. Fun stuff there.
Yeah, PG-13 for sure.
Yeah, I think definitely are. Yeah, definitely are.
I did okay, so and I guess because I saw a lot of comments about this, about Reggie Miller saying that, hey, if we had won that tip, we may have won that game or whatever. And I see people like, oh my god, they would have been up 5 with 6 minutes left or whatever. But again, and you sort of alluded to it too, the way that points are distributed in today's NBA and how they were distributed in 1998 NBA, very different. So, do I think that the Indiana would have sealed the deal up 5, with 6 minutes left or whatever? No, but 5 was a lot more than it is now. 5 now is in 10 seconds that can get wiped out and redone. And that's not only just because of the shots that are being taken, it's the threes, all that sort of stuff. But look at the final scores of these games. It was 88-83. 5's a lot. You know what I mean? 5 is a very, very big lead. So I did see a lot of people kind of ragging on that and ragging on Reggie, but I don't think he's totally out to lunch there. I think he's slightly out to lunch. I don't think you're sealing that game, with that amount of time left. But I do think that people maybe don't give enough credit to how much 5 points was in 1998 compared to what it is, in 2020 or whatever.
Yes. So going to 1997, we go to the Utah Jazz series, the first one. Jordan, not surprisingly, motivated by Karl Malone getting MVP. He does say that he didn't think Karl was undeserving of it, but it still, made him upset.
But I'm still going to kill this guy. I'm still going to kill this asshole. So.
Yes. Jordan felt disrespected by I don't know why, but I always thought it was Byron Russell, not Brian Russell.
Dude, I think my entire life I've switched. I think on a daily... I'm not a daily. I don't think about Byron Russell daily, but on a monthly or so. Anytime I think of Byron Russell, I always switch it. Right there, I think I just said Brian, and then the next sentence I said Byron.
Right.
I mix it up all the time. I know it's Brian, but my brain says it's Byron for some reason.
I don't think I knew it was. I don't think I knew it was Brian until today for whatever reason.
Are we sure it was? We don't know. This could be. Are we Mandela affecting? What's going on here?
Yes. No. Well, but yeah, both Jordan and Stockton call him Brian, and I'm like, oh, they just mispronounced it. I looked it up, but it's oh yeah, it is Brian. I'm like, what? So yeah, yes. So anyway, when Jordan was on his baseball sabbatical, he's at a game, or I forget the situation, but he sees, he goes to say hello to Malone and Stockton, and then Brian Russell, says, "Hey, why'd you quit? I could guard your ass." Basically just kind of trash talking Jordan. Jordan's kind of like, "Oh, you better let him off me," and so now of course Jordan takes glee in embarrassing Russell. The first time he does so is in game 1. It's the game winner by faking Russell. He mentioned specifically that he noticed that Russell put his weight on his front feet so he could easily fake him out. And we kind of go into the back and forth of the game. Of course, the series best known for Game 5, which had been known as the flu game. I guess now is to be known as the food poisoning game. Or I think we should call it the pizza game, personally.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's call it Pizzagate, so we don't have to talk about the other Pizzagate ever again.
Right.
I'm really gonna try that, where
right.
When you think of Pizzagate, you just immediately think of this. You immediately think of Michael Jordan playing with food poisoning or the flu or whatever it might be or whatever, and not whatever the hell the other Pizzagate thing is. So right. Andrew Bogut will be upset, but the rest of the world will be fine. So
there you go. Well, anything we can do to upset Andrew,
exactly.
Bogut,
fuck that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So so before Game 5, they're in Salt Lake. Jordan gets hungry. They decide to order pizza. Nothing's open in Utah. It's late. And then 5 guys come delivering this one pizza. So obviously it's a little weird for five guys to be delivering one pizza. I don't know if I would be suspicious that it was poison. I'd be more thinking like, oh
Right.
yeah, these guys have some idea that Michael Jordan is the one ordering
Exactly.
this. They want to say Michael Jordan. So that seems okay.
Right,
That
like
doesn't seem
so
super
Tim Grover, who's Michael Jordan's trainer, is like,
right.
oh, I saw five guys looking through the door, and I knew that this pizza was trouble. It's like, no, like a call came in, and these guys were like, I bet this is for Michael Jordan, or this is for a Chicago Bulls player. You know, can I come with you for the delivery? Like
Right.
that's how
Yeah.
it. Like I'm positive. Like having worked at a pizza place, having worked at, like, I could see that absolutely being a thing where like it was slow, nobody else was getting orders. They see
Yeah.
this order for, I don't know who it was, whatever they call. I hope to God they didn't say, hi. Michael Jordan would like a pizza. Can you deliver it right now? And like
Right.
then they're just asking for it. But yeah, I'm of your mindset that like I think they just thought, hey, well, cool, Michael Jordan's gonna be there. Let's all go and see Michael Jordan. Like that's it. Like it's harmless. I don't know how do you poison a pizza anyway? Like what do they have in there that could poison it? Like the weird conspiracy around it is like I think dude just ate a whole pizza all at once. It was probably a really shitty pizza. If you're ordering it at 10:30, p.m. in Utah, it's probably not a good pizza. I'm sure he had some libations going on as well. We've all been there, man. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think it has to be poison. It's just you ate a whole pizza and it was bad pizza,
Well, whatever happened, of course, famously he's extremely sick. We've all seen the footage of this, very famous footage, but he manages to gut through 38 points in 44 minutes. We've all seen the footage of, Pippen, famously helping him to the bench after he he misses a free throw but gets the loose ball and then sends a pass, takes a pass from Pippen, hits the shot to seal the game. So obviously one of the great moments in the Jordan mystique. It was nice to get Jordan's official side of the story, even if I am a little bit skeptical of some of the details.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'll be debated forever. Like they try to kind of clear it up right there, like, oh, this is what it was, and like, it's still up for debate, I believe. So, and that's good. I like a little mystery in our lives, so I'm glad that it's still up for debate a little.
Yeah, and and we get a little bit of a surprising detour into Steve Kerr's story, although it was definitely interesting and well worth it, and I think not particularly well known, but Kerr talks about kind of being an unheralded recruit and going to University of Arizona, and then sort of being a marginal NBA player, getting his first break kind of with the Cavs. Talked about watching John Paxson a lot, and then later he goes to the Bulls, and Paxson mentored Kerr in the last year to kind of fill the role apparently of the white shooter that the Bulls needed to have. I guess probably a Jerry Krause thing. He just needed to have one white shooter on the team to make him feel okay. Yeah,
like especially we talk about the '90s. Anytime we cover '90s game or we look at the '90s, like every GM was like, well, who's our really tall bad white guy? It's like we need to have one. We gotta have
either the bad white guy or the white shooter.
Exactly. You gotta have sometimes both. Both is obviously better, but it's like, where's Chris Dudley? We need a bad white guy.
We do.
We need a guy who's on the court for 15 minutes a game and contributes absolutely nothing. We need this guy.
Like, hey, he can set screens. I'm sure
that's true. Hard, really hard screens, and sometimes some elbows in the hips. So you can't put a price on that.
So Steve Kerr's dad, Malcolm Kerr, was a university professor. He eventually became president of the American University in Beirut. This is during the early 80s. Of course, there's a lot of turmoil in Beirut. And he ends up being assassinated by two gunmen who were posing as students there. This is around the time, of course, there was, an attack in Lebanon. I think 300 Marines were killed during that time. There's a lot of, violence and all that sort of thing. Kerr's, in a college basketball player during the time. And, there was obviously not a super well-known story. One thing that I thought was interesting is Kerr was explicitly asked whether he and Jordan had ever discussed their father's deaths, obviously both losing their fathers at a young age. And the fact that, they had not done so. I guess I wasn't surprised that they hadn't done so, but I guess it just had, on one hand, I think Jordan certainly respected Kerr, but, I get the sense, that, they weren't particularly that close. But again, when you're at the level of fame that Jordan is at and you have the level of status, it is a little bit hard to, be close to everyone. You have to, I guess, put a certain amount of distance when you're in that position. perhaps.
Yeah, and I think also it speaks to a lot of I think Michael Jordan in a lot of, I don't think he honestly gave two shits about anyone else's life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I don't mean
Right.
that in like a terrible way about like it's nothing personal against Steve Kerr. I just think honestly he didn't really care that much about like learning about the lives of any of the people that he played with, which I guess is fine in one sense. He's fully able to do that, but yeah, you don't really hear from anybody about profound conversations they had with Michael Jordan about anything other than like him calling them a bitch or something like that. You know what I mean? Like the only thing we always kind of hear from Jordan is about how competitive and how we want to win and games and and all that sort of stuff. But very few moments of like, yeah, Jordan talked to me about this or him and I talked about this. So yeah, I find it hard. I think Kerr, in a sense is saying, well, I'm sure it was just too traumatic for Jordan to talk about with me, but it's like, I find it hard to believe that it didn't come up at some point between those two, or I don't find it hard to believe because maybe Jordan just never ever got to like that level of conversation with Steve Kerr.
Sure.
Ever. And I'm glad there are people like Steve Kerr who, has made it a note. And anytime you hear about the Warriors, it's like he will sit down with anybody and talk to anybody about anything, with his players. And I think that's really cool as well. Like a person that will open up and discuss stuff. But yeah, I've never, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just missing stories, but I've never really heard about Jordan ever really having like deep conversations with any of his teammates about really anything. So
Yeah,
other than playing and winning the next game.
Yeah, maybe guys like Pippen, the guys who have been with forever, but yeah, I think obviously later on as Jordan's fame becomes greater, and I could see the greater distance between them. Although obviously you see some of the footage, there's certainly a level of camaraderie and a level of him. He's not afraid to give his teammates grief,
Sure.
and joke around with them for sure. But anyway, so we go to Game 6 of the Utah series. Bulls are up 3-2. And we get the story of Kerr, who hadn't played well in that series, but is in the opportunity. Hits the go-ahead shot for the title. He jokes about how Jordan is talking to him on the bench, and Jordan is sort of like covering his mouth and just kind of like subtly saying like, "Hey, be ready." He's literally do that to do so, and then like Kerr loudly says, "Oh yeah, I'll be ready."
Yeah, if he double teams you, I'll be ready. It's
Yes.
like, I'm not passing this guy anymore. Like,
Right.
too loud.
And then we get clips from the the rally, the championship rally afterward, where Kerr tells a joke about Michael not really wanting to have the last shot, maybe trying to do something different, and then his classic line of, "Oh, I guess I'll have to bail out Michael again."
Right. Yeah.
So that's a good one. So anything else about episode 9?
Not really. No, I thought a really nice, real tight episode. A lot of really good stories in there. Some tugging at the heartstrings with the Steve Kerr story, the Gus story, and some good stories about the Pacers series in '98 and then the Jazz, of course. So yeah, really, really enjoyed episode 9.
Yes. So episode 10, it's all about 98 at this point. At the beginning, we get Mark Venzel talking about how Jordan's gift is that he was completely present and didn't worry about what he couldn't control, which
literally the opposite of what he did in his entire life.
The first thing about him being completely present, I get that, and I get that like maybe one thing that was special about Jordan is he didn't let like fear of failure drive him, or maybe it drove him, but it didn't like limit him. He wasn't scared in the big moments. You certainly can say that about Jordan, or he didn't act a way in which he was scared of the big moments. So, which obviously is for normal people like you and me is hard to do. So maybe that part is true, but yeah, it sort of seems like it, at least in other ways in Jordan's life, and maybe basketball ways, this is completely true, but outside of basketball, it does not seem true at all.
No, not at all. Yeah.
We get Jordan's kids a little bit, basically.
Yeah, there they are. Hey, people were wondering. It was actually kind of funny. As this is going on, I started seeing like as this episode 10 started, there were a few people tweeting out like, "Man, it's kind of weird that we haven't seen like Jordan's family at all." Like, I know we weren't going to see his ex-wife or whatever.
Right.
The fact that we haven't seen his sons or his daughter at all, and then like literally that minute, it's like boom, there's Marcus and there's Jeffrey and there's I think Jasmine, I believe is his daughter's name or whatever. But yeah, it was cool to see a little bit of them. I guess there's they were all like 9 when this happened. So like, what are they gonna say? They're all like 9 and 6 years old. So it's like I don't know.
Are they new enough to know they hated Utah? So
yeah,
I guess that was about it. That the atmosphere was tough. That the boys didn't travel with Michael because of part of the reason because of the atmosphere. Really the only person we get from the Utah point of view is Stockton. No one else is interviewed. Malone's not interviewed. Jerry Sloan. No Greg Ostertag. I don't know if there was just no interest in getting anybody else, or maybe they ran out of time.
Yeah, what was Antoine Carr too busy? Like, what's
right? Yeah, I know. Yeah. And Stockton, he says, well, I mean, I respected them, but didn't feel an aura about them. I don't know how I could have played them if I felt that way about them. So, and then, 98, the team, 98, the Jazz had home court advantage. So they obviously had the first games. They do win game 1 by 3 in overtime. Game 2, Bulls win by 5. So we're split 1-1. In between, we get Jordan, and I didn't quite understand the context of this. But I mean, it was basically talking about like how, Shaq could back down anybody, and how can you defend Shaq? And the Jordan basically just saying, I ain't Shaq. And I did you get any more of that than I did?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I have no idea what he meant there. I don't know if he meant something like, because I know at this time the conversation around Shaq was like the calling fouls on him and how do you call fouls and what do you do? So I don't know if it was that or so. I don't know what the hell this was about.
Or how limited. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't quite get that, but perhaps we'll see later on whether there's more to that than I really understood. But anyway, game 3, the Bulls just completely dominated win by 42 points. The Jazz only scored 54 points, which was the lowest amount of points in any game since the shot clock before the shot clock era, which is pretty amazing. Even Bill Wennington gets on the act. He's the last Bull to score. He hits a basket near the end of the game. So weird how extraordinarily close the rest of the series was. Like, I think every game was less than 5 points, except for this one.
It's so weird. Yeah, it's such a weird game, and it's like there's no reason why it was as bad as it was either. It's just like nobody on Utah so Karl Malone was 8 of 11 in that game. He had 22 points, like a perfectly normal Karl Malone game.
Right.
Brian Russell 1 of 7. Greg Ostertag 1 of 7. Something named Chris Morris was 2 of 9. Like, they just it's just very weird. Like, John Stockton only took 4 shots. Like, I don't know what. It's one of the most bizarre games in NBA history because, yeah, like you're saying, the other series, 88-85, 93-88, 86-82, 83-81, 87-8, like every other game is within like, a couple of points. And it's like, oh yeah, 96-54. And it's like, what? Like, why did they not score in there? They scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. Like, what? Like, what's happening? I don't know. It's so weird. It's so strange. I still to this day can't understand why they just were so bad that game. It's so terrible. And it didn't linger. Like, the next game, they were right back there and they were good. It's just like, oh, okay. Like, it's very, very bizarre.
Right. So, in game 4, competitive game. Oh, well, before that, I guess more importantly, Dennis Rodman skips practice to attend WCW Monday Nitro and hang out with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. Yeah. So hitting DDP with chairs.
Yeah. This is our worlds are crossing here. So, Russell Spective, your wrestling podcast. We recently talked about Dennis Rodman's foray into the world of professional wrestling. Well, most notably, we fixated on Rodman versus Savage, Road Wild, 1999. But you can
the best Dennis Rodman wrestling performance by far.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, of the well, to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of one. He falls asleep in while the match is going on, so that one's kind of out.
Yeah, that one's not good. No,
that one's out. The other one, I mean, the one at Bash of the Beach '98. He's conscious the entire time. I guess that's cool.
Yeah, '97. Yeah, that one's all right. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, so he skipped. He done wrestling the year before '97. So they don't get into that, which is they don't need to. But the '98 one, a big deal. Skipping practice to go to it, creates a a media stir.
The best part, not to interrupt, the best part is when they ask Phil Jackson what he's doing, and Phil's like, I don't know. His asshole knows. Like, he's not gonna say he went to go wrestle or something, He went to go to Nitro to like, he didn't want to say that, but they're just like, it was an excused absence. They're like, what was he doing? And Phil's like, I don't know. As and then they just cut right to Dennis Rodman walking out with the NWO title. It's just great stuff.
So Phil, another quote he said, he's asked, what do you think about this, taking attention away from the final? He's like, well, it's taking attention away from you guys, but for us, it's not any different. So, and then Rodman comes out game 4 and, has 14 points, 14 rebounds. The Jazz or excuse me, the Bulls win this game. So the Bulls up 3-1 in the series. Another great moment is media relations guy summoning the documentary cameras to come over. And basically he's just kind of complaining about like, yeah, now I got to like, now we got to try to like sneak Rodman out of the building to avoid like the 300 media that are gathered like in this other section. And a really funny moment of Rodman basically running away with a bunch of cameras chasing after him
Yeah.
and getting in the car to avoid being interviewed. So fun times there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know that whole area too, which is pretty fun too. As you're watching him kind of run through, you're like, "Oh, I've been there!" Like that's awesome. That's cool.
Right.
Like, it's really just a fun area, to know the United Center, and know kind of the nooks and crannies of the place. But yeah, it's so funny. They see like a glimpse of Rodman, and you just see the like 100 people just running as quickly as possible with just heavy camera gear, and it's just like, my God, it's just it's so you see what kind of media, just like, and we talked about it in prior episodes too. It's like people. I don't know if a lot of people understand just how big of a deal this entire thing was and how big of a deal the NBA was at this time. It was everything. It was news. It was sports. It was entertainment. Like everybody was covering it. Everybody was covering it. Everybody was focused on it. Every move they made was a big deal. It wasn't just a sports story. It was a worldwide, a global story. In just basic news, just everything that these guys did was that, and yeah, you see this, and it's like it's hard to imagine today like that happening to any NBA player, where there's just a guy went down a hallway and just 100 people just run as quickly as possible, try to get just a glimpse of him, a second of him.
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
Well, and I feel like the media are segmented off more from athletes than they were at this
for
point,
sure.
too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I would be interested to see to look at like a Golden State Warriors like average, what when their team bus is pulling up, what the crowds look like, or when they're going to their hotel after championship, just to get a sense of scale, the difference between what it's like now versus what it was like then. And because I don't know exactly. I'm sure there's still a lot of crowds, there's still a lot of people that they have to deal with, but it's hard to imagine it being as massive as this. Some of them are really, really surprising how big they are, for sure. So go to game 5. Karl Malone, it's a big game, 39 points. Jordan has 28, but only 45% true shooting percentage. It is close at the end. Jordan does miss a prayer that does at least hit the rim. And his quote afterwards saying everybody was holding their breath, which is kind of cute, was amusing. Of course, the Bulls lose the chance to close out the series at home, which was certainly, add a little bit of anxiety. You have to go back to Utah, where it was a tough place for them to play, for sure.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of interesting. They didn't really delve much into it. And I get why they wouldn't have done that, but Jordan is in the locker room, and he's obviously talking shit to Scott Burrell because it's an episode or a minute of this thing can't go by without Scott Burrell getting sideswiped there or whatever. But Jordan's like, yeah, I'm gonna get you guys a ring. I'm gonna win you this game. Yeah, text winner, you're gonna get a ring. Scott Burrell, you're never gonna see me again, so we're gonna get a ring. And then it didn't happen. He lost, and I just kind of find that funny because it's like, man, if somebody did that to Jordan, can you fucking imagine?
Right? Oh yeah.
If Karl Malone was like, yeah, we're gonna win this series, and then they didn't, like, oh my God, it would never ending. But Jordan says it and then fails and misses a shot at the end of the game. And it's just kind of like, oh yeah, whatever, who cares? Because and it makes sense, another game is gonna have an iconic shot and an iconic win or whatever. But yeah, just kind of funny that just kind of glossed over that. He promises a victory, he tells these guys we're gonna win a ring, and then he goes out there and doesn't do it. So
yes. So we see Pippen with one narrative, obviously, in the season is Pippen's injuries, and he's got really bad back pain by this point. You can see after he hits a dunk at the very beginning of it, he jams his back and basically misses the rest of the first half. He is able to return after halftime, but extremely limited, kind of going back in and out, to get treatment and to come back into the game, and basically is a decoy the entire game. We do get footage of Rodman and Malone getting into it. We do not include the commentary. I remember Bob Costas being extremely disgusted by the behavior here, and kind of almost accusing them of rigging it, just to hype up their wrestling match. At this point, I think it was known that they were going to be wrestling each other at Bash at the Beach. Yeah, so which I That I remember that very clear. It was very clear that Bob Costas did not like Dennis Rodman at all.
Oh God, no, yeah. Bob Costas didn't like wrestling at that point, and that became
Yeah,
very evident in, in the future
that's
years.
right.
And
I forgot about that. Yeah,
yeah, and obviously, yeah, he did not like Rodman, and yeah, I forget the exact quotes. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but yeah, when Rodman and Malone are doing that thing, he's like, "It's hard to know what's going on out there. If this is real camaraderie or real competition, or one of those fake things to promote some pay-per-view buys or something like that." It's like you
yeah,
can just hear the disgust in his voice as it's happening.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I like the good ass slaps afterwards too to Rodman
Oh
and
yeah,
Malone. Like you
right.
always think that like right when that's done that they would just start like punching one another, but they're like, yeah, good stuff, man. You're like, man,
Yeah,
really?
yeah,
Like, we
yeah,
hear this era about how, oh my god, it's these guys. Every time something happened, they wanted to kill the other guy and steal his heart and eat it in front of his children or whatever. And it's like these guys getting to like what could have started like a huge brawl, and they're just like, hey, yeah, good play, man, good play. They just slap each other on the ass and then we move on. So, you know, and they're about to co-promote a giant wrestling pay-per-view. So
yeah, yeah.
maybe these players were friends, even though
Maybe
yeah.
at least friendly. Yes. Um. So yeah, the Bulls are down 5 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Jordan really struggles to shoot in the fourth quarter. Is all of his shots or most of his shots coming up short. The Jazz are up 40 seconds left after Stockton hit the 3-pointer on a great pass by Malone.
Yeah.
By the way, so looking good for the Jazz. But then Jordan, he takes Russell to the rim, gets a layup with 37 seconds left, so 1 point left. The Jazz get the ball into Karl Malone, but Jordan is able to steal from him on the weak side. Malone didn't see him at all. No timeout. Jordan holds the ball and then hits the famous go-ahead jumper with the push off on Russell. How forceful that push off was is debatable. I think Costas refers to it as the sort of push off that like what was it that a maitre d would give to somebody going to the table.
A little more than that. I think if a maitre d gave me that, I would be like, oh, okay, reel it in a little, buddy.
Like, chill out.
I know where to go. Thank you.
Chill out, Michael Jordan.
Right.
But yeah. No, yeah, I think it's a little bit more. His momentum was kind of going that way, like already. So, I can completely understand not calling an offensive foul in the situation, but whatever. So, yes, at that point, Stockton afterward, gets a 3 attempt, but it misses, and the Bulls get to another three-peat. So, it was great to see just sort of the footage afterward, sort of let the story tell itself. Without a whole lot of voiceover. I mean, you get conversation between Phil and Jordan. Jordan saying, "Hey, I never give up." Phil kind of expressing some doubts. Jordan afterwards saying, "Hey, they can't win until we quit." We get Leonardo DiCaprio showing up and congratulating Jordan backstage. Jordan referring to his movie as The Man with the Iron Face.
Yeah.
Instead of Iron Mask.
It was a fucking terrible movie, so he shouldn't have even acknowledged the movie at all. He should have walked by Leonardo DiCaprio. Just, hey, Titanic. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, but
yeah, there you go. I guess this was post Titanic, so that was already that was the things that did. DiCaprio was huge at this point.
Yeah, so. This is in his like period where he was like making a lot of really bad movies. So you're like, man, this guy was like so good in Titanic, and like everything was going. And man, he's like in a lot of bad movies, and he righted the ship. Leonardo. Yeah, I think he's doing okay now. So
probably doing all right. Yeah. And then as they go outside, it's it's dusk, but Jordan's like, hey, it's still daylight. We want to get some golf swings in. He's enjoying this. Everyone's obviously happy. You see Malone going to the bus to congratulate Jordan. Jordan later on, he's in his hotel. He's playing the piano in the locker room. I guess the backstory behind that is Ahmad Rashad was teaching him how to play piano during the time. So, of course. and he's wearing his game shorts during that. You do see eventually they cut back to Pippen, who's very gracious about like one of the first people to say anything nice about Jerry Krause. Yes. He was a great general manager. I was so blessed to play with Phil Jackson. He's the greatest coach ever. Michael Jordan, the greatest player ever. And he said Krause was the greatest general manager ever. So then we get to, the footage of the 6th championship rally at Grant Park. There's a massive crowd, even compared to 97 one. It's a bigger crowd. It seems like a joyous occasion for everybody. There's no real hint of like the bitterness. even like Phil Jackson is complimentary about Jerry Krause, and so forth. So you get the final send off, and then you get
Real
Ryan.
quick, hey,
Go
real
ahead.
quickly
Yeah,
before you get to one thing, and I think we mentioned it a little bit earlier,
yeah.
in our past reaction episodes that we did or whatnot. But I mean, one thing that was really cool, yeah, like 10 minutes left in the documentary, we finally give Jerry Krause some credit, not bad. But
Uh,
like I mentioned too, at the time, I remember the feeling at the time was like everybody just kind of wanted it to be done with. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
and when they finally won, it was like, oh, thank God! Like they
right,
won, we're done. The drama, like we don't have to ask the same questions, we don't have to worry about what's going to happen next year. It's like it was a finality to it, and it was like, all right, look, everybody knows that this shit's done, that it's not going to be back next year, but let's just celebrate this right now. Let's celebrate the 6 championships. Let's celebrate the last decade. Let's celebrate the careers, and then tomorrow will be tomorrow. But like, let's just enjoy this moment right now. It was cathartic because it was an exhausting season where every single and they really addressed that pretty well, I think, in The Last Dance, of showing just like every time they're coming together. It's like, hey, Pip, you're gonna come back next year. Hey,
right.
Jackson, Phil, what's going on with next year? Hey, Jerry, why you? It's just like, all right, like let's just come on, like let's just let the season play out and see how it's gonna go. And yeah, when they finally won, those questions were done because it was like, oh, okay, like they're done. They won. And we pretty much know what's going to happen now. So yeah, that's where I feel like Phil, that weight is off his shoulders now, where he can just go, hey, Jerry, yeah, whatever, and we're good. Like I'll be done. I'll go get another job here in another few years, I'm sure. And everybody just felt like they were done finally, and it was the weight of all these questions and all this pressure and all this sort of stuff was gone. It was just like celebrate, have fun, remember the good times, and then whatever happens tomorrow, but whatever. They can't take this away from us. So that's why that win was so important and so such a just a weight off everyone's shoulders when they finally won that title, and it was finally over in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So Reinsdorf tells a story about asking Phil to come back, and Phil basically saying, "Nah, I should take a break." Now, what isn't clear in the context, apparently, Reinsdorf asked this in the context of the Bulls are going to be rebuilt, but we still want you to be back, and obviously Phil's not signing up for that.
No.
And then we get Jordan sitting there, and then the interviewer says, "Oh, do you want to see what Jerry Reinsdorf said about why I had to break up the team?" And Jordan's obviously interested in that. And then basically Reinsdorf is like, "Well, we've tried it. If we would have brought everybody back, it would have been really way too expensive, and they were getting older, and it wouldn't have made sense." So basically, he's cheaping out, basically, and Jordan doesn't buy that. He thinks that everyone, probably would have come back to go for number 7. He said, yeah, it would have been tough to talk Pippen into it, but maybe he would have come back on a 1-year deal, which I don't think is real. I don't buy that part of it. I don't think Pippen's coming back. And I also don't, and then he asked, like, oh, was it a relief or was it maddening to leave at your peak? And, he says, oh, it was maddening to leave. I really wish we could have come back and run for another one. I know Jordan says that now, and he may believe that now, but I think, like, you see just the relief on everybody's face that you talked about, after winning it in 98, and like, and how hard it was for them to go through that year, dealing with all the scrutiny and all the press and stuff. Do I really think that he wanted to come back? I mean, I'm sure part of him did, but I think part of him was just as glad to let it be over. And, as someone who gave up the game once already, I think he seemed pretty comfortable with that decision at the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's one of these things, like, I understand, like, the competitive nature and all that sort of stuff and whatever, but, like, I think they ended it the best way they could I mean, how much better was this ending than, like, them coming back in 1999 and, maybe Rodman's not there. Maybe, Jackson doesn't come back. Maybe they bring Jordan back and, Pippen, they probably, maybe they trade Pippen. Maybe they keep him for another year or whatever. And it's just this, like, it felt like everything was just a perfect. I mean, you get 2 3-peats. I'm sorry. Now we owe Pat Riley $1,000 or whatever. So,
man,
gosh darn it. Damn it. But, all right. But, like, you get the 6 titles, the 2 3-peats. It was, Jordan hits the final shot. It was just a perfect moment. And I know that everybody says, oh, they should have brought him back. They should have done it or whatever. I think the best answer would have been like, maybe it was just better that we ended it the way we did. It just was perfect the way it ended, and it all felt cathartic. And like you're saying, Jordan says that now. I mean, that dude had played 3 straight years of 82. I mean, that dude did not miss a game ever. I mean, playing 40 minutes a game. Like, I do think that his body at some point would have started breaking down. And like you said, there was that pressure, that annoyance a lot of time of being in the media, being a public figure, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's like, that's the great debate of all time, is like, what would have happened if they came back? But I honestly think they ended it at the perfect time, because you would hate to come back and not win. You know what I mean? You would hate to come back and you lose in the Eastern Conference finals, or the Eastern Conference semifinals, or maybe you make it to the finals and you're facing the San Antonio Spurs or whatever. And then you had the lockout, so it was a weird year anyway. It's just like, it's perfect that they left when they did. They left on top of the NBA, the NBA's peak, the lockout, pre-lockout, all that sort of stuff. It's just. It's too perfect. It's too storybook the way they did it. So I know, like you said, now it's easy to say all this sort of stuff, but yeah, we know goddamn well that Scottie Pippen was leaving, that he was going to get, this sign and trade and get out of there. We know that Rodman was on real shaky ground at that point with the Bulls, Jackson and Krause, and Jordan even says it too. Like, Jerry Krause said that Phil Jackson's never coming back, even if he goes 82-0.
Right.
That may have changed if Reinsdorf said, hey, I called him and he's coming back, but like, still it's hard to repair that relationship. And yeah, you bring Michael back, but I think it's perfect how they ended it. So,
yeah, I don't think there's. I mean, yeah. First of all, I don't think it's realistic to bring them all back, and even if it was, it's hard without Pippen. It's hard for me to imagine them being able to win another championship. Maybe if they make the right trade, but Rodman was basically done at that point.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know if they had enough depth to be able to have Jordan carry them to it. Plus, lockout year, and Jordan, he ended up injuring his finger anyway. Wouldn't have been able to play much of that year. So, that's of course, another issue. So, yeah, no, I mean, but I agree. Like, as far as the story goes, it's hard to imagine it ending better than it did. So, for sure. Anything else?
I think that's it. Yeah, we got a nice little Pearl Jam montage at the end here to really bring it all together.
Really
which
good.
is cool.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, obviously the production of it was incredible. The story was told, and you and I, it would have really been nice to have an objective look at it rather than it being from Jordan's point of view to an extent. I mean, I think having it be from Jordan's point of view, it means you get the more unvarnished feelings from him. He's pretty, candid about things that I would not have expected from him. So I think we get that, but this is obviously going to become an important part of the historical imprint of what people believe about this era and what happened and going to be kind of dominate, that discourse, which already has a lot of things going into it. And I think it really just kind of solidifies the stuff about Jordan's legend rather than, having anything that's critical of any aspect of it. But it's what it is. It was entertaining. It was good. I'm glad we have it. Rather than us not having it, rather than it, even if, there are definite flaws with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's, of course, there's a lot of ways that they could have maybe improved upon this or done some things that were more, documentary-like or a little bit more objective, as opposed to just kind of telling the story through what Jordan wanted you to tell the story,
Sure.
as which I get it. Again, like, it's very hard to get, and that's, a perfect. Michael Jordan has his entire post NBA career has been this. It's very calculated, very, he's not a guy who's going to give a ton of interviews. He's not a guy that's going to give a ton of press. He's not going to give you a lot of him anymore. He feels like he gave everything that he could while he was playing. So he's very private and very, selective about what he does now. And so probably to get him to even do this whatsoever, you had to kind of say, all right, well, you can kind of, we'll weave the story around your words, which again, it's Michael Jordan. Like, I see why they would do that. Like, I get absolutely why they would do that and why the decision was done that way. Yeah, there's some ways that maybe it could have been improved a little bit by being a little bit more, diving a little bit deep, investigating a little bit, questioning a little bit of what Jordan said. But like, the big get is to have Michael Jordan sit down and talk to you for hours upon hours upon hours.
Sure,
and he probably doesn't do that unless you let him have some control. So, am I like, if the options are, let's do this documentary without talking to Jordan or having nothing from Jordan, or let's have this documentary the way we did, I'll take the way we did 100%. Because I think it absolutely, it's still a very, very good story. And the things that were left out, the things that were kind of loosely, that we could be a little critical of, weren't like overwhelmingly bad or anything that I would really say, oh, geez, that completely made it, kind of irrelevant or whatnot. So, what I would say though, I thought the production of it was really good. The editing was fantastic. The music choices were really, really good. But yeah, the one, you know, I guess I would say, yeah, the objectivity of it was a little loose, but you know, I get it. And the plus, you know, the good thing, the plus side or whatever, is that a lot of people I think are going to be way more interested in learning more about NBA history over the next few years, which is really, really cool. Or, you know, at least as long as the shutdown goes on or whatever, as long as there's not real NBA basketball going on, I think it's kind of opened up those floodgates. So I hope more people kind of embrace it, read about it, learn, and use this as a jumping off point to say, hey, there's a lot of fun stuff in this, you know, NBA here. So in the history of this sport and the history of this league or whatever. So I'm gonna find out more about this and find out more about these teams and these players and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I hopefully that happens. We'll see. So.
Yes, and speaking of diving into NBA history, you can learn more about NBA history by listening to past episodes of our podcast. You can find all of them on our YouTube channel, which will include a link in the show notes. And you can find us at the Step Back at fansided.com. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can find us on social media at Facebook and Twitter at Over and Back NBA. So thanks again for listening, and we'll be back again soon.